So far we've been talking about arrays, which is a way to store data, but there are much more sophisticated ways to deal with data, and in this lesson we're going to get a high-level introduction to objects. We actually have been working with objects so far in the code, I just haven't told you that that's what they were. And so the point of this lesson is to get a little bit more systematic about it, so you can recognize objects and what's going on with them as you use other people's packages, which allow you to do some more sophisticated things with JavaScript. So let's start by talking about what objects are. They're meant to kind of represent something like a real-world object, say your car. The car has properties, so it has a price, it has a color, it has a horsepower, all kinds of data about how powerful it is, how it drives. It has a brand, and there's also things that the car can do. It has abilities, or it has functions. So it can drive, it can stop, it can turn on, it can turn off. You can create objects in JavaScript that represent more complicated things, that have a bunch of attributes and some functions that work on those attributes. Let's do an example here. So we're going to create a variable called student. And again, this is a variable just like any other so far. But now we're going to make this into an object, and so we're going to have curly braces that's going to contain some of the data. We're going to start out with attributes of students. So for example, you'll have a first name, colon, so we'll put me in here, a last name. If we're talking about this class, we could have a homework 1 score, and a homework 2 score. And let's stick with that as our list of attributes of students. Now it can get really crazy if I want to say homework average, because that's actually an average of these two numbers. So we do some kind of weird stuff, and I'm showing you this more just so you can kind of see it, not because I expect you to master it at this point. But we say, we're going to create a function, but we don't give it a name. We just say function and then the parentheses. And then we want to add the homework 1 and the homework 2 score and divide them by 2 to get the average. But we can't just say HW1 score because we don't know what it's referring to. We want to say the homework 1 score for this student. So say this.HW1 score plus this.HW2 score. We'll put these in parentheses, divided by 2. And since this is a function and we want that to come back, we're going to return that. Okay, so now we could do alert, and let's just try student dot first name and run that in our code. Here we see it says Jen. If we do HW average, it's actually showing our code, which means I have an error in my code. So let's go back and fix that. So since this is a function, this homework average, I actually need to put those parentheses there. So now if I reload the page, we get the actual value. So we have two parts to our student object. We have the attributes, and then we have the functions. You use your variable name dot an attribute name in order to access the attribute, like HW1 score. And if you're using one of the functions, you use the name of the function and then a set of parentheses. Now, it's possible that you'll want to create complex data structures like this, and depending on what you're doing with your programming, this is really common and useful. But I really want you to know that we've been using objects all over the place. For example, when we made our array states, and I'll just recreate a short one here, DC in Maryland. We said states.length. That's because JavaScript knows that states is an array, but it also treats it like an object that has the property .length. And we could also do states.sort, which is a function, exactly like we did here. And that's because JavaScript treats the array states like an object that has the method, the function, that it can be sorted. So you've seen objects a lot anytime you have this dot that's connecting things. We've also seen it with the document object model, where we've done things like document.f1.age.value. We actually have an object for the document. It's called the document object model. So the document's an object, and we're getting its property called f1, and that property age, and the property of that thing called value. So you've seen these a lot, but I just want to kind of spell this out so you can recognize it. And as I said, we're going to see much more sophisticated objects made available to us in other people's packages, which we'll see in the next lessons. And now you know to look for this dot in either an attribute name or a function name that's going to allow you to access certain things about that object.